I've lost track of how many urban legends videos I've done. My memory is getting a little bit weak these days. One thing I do remember though is that our video on Japanese urban legend was one of the first that we did. You guys seem to love it, it spawned a whole series, and now we've travelled the whole world with it. There was something extra creepy about the Japanese ones though, I think. I had some really good ones saved for if we ever did do a part 2, and guess what? You're watching it right now. This is your last chance to turn back before things get very creepy. Okay, here we go. My name is Danny Burke, and this is the top 10 scary Japanese urban legends part 2. Starting off at number 10 now, we have HIMURO Mansion. If you love creepy houses with very paranormal stories, you may have heard of this very famous one. HIMURO Mansion is a secluded building on the outskirts of Tokyo where brutal murders were carried out by a family in what was known as the strangling ritual. It was insane. The family believed there was a portal on their property that was bringing them bad karma from deep within the earth. They decided they had to seal it. They adopted a local village girl at birth and raised her in isolation until she was ready for her purpose. When she was old enough, they tied her wrists, ankles and neck to 5 different oxen. Then they made the oxen pull in 5 different directions. The girl's limbs and head were ripped clean off her body. They then took the rope, soaked it in her own blood and laid it at the entrance of the so-called portal. This was their ritual, and they believed that every sacrifice would protect them for the years to come. Something went wrong though during the very last ritual. The woman who was supposed to be raised in isolation had actually formed a bond with a man who had tried to rescue her. Her captors didn't realize this though, and how much this tiny detail would affect the ritual. It backfired and cursed them. The father went insane and murdered his whole family before falling on his own sword. This dark ending stained the mansion with their souls forever. Locals say the walls are often splattered with fresh blood, even though nobody has lived there for years. Some say it's the blood of the family reappearing there. Others say it actually belongs to people who visit the mansion these days, not realizing they are the next victims of the strangling ritual. Next up at number 9 now, we have Akamanto. In English, this one is known as the Red Cape. It's said to be a malicious spirit who kills people at public and school bathrooms. The spirit will always ask them if they want red or blue paper. If you say red, you will suffer a bloody, violent death. If you say blue, you'll be suffocated until you turn blue and die. You can't trick the spirit either. If you try and say you just want normal white paper, ghostly hands will appear out of nowhere, sometimes right out of the toilet you're sitting on, and drag you down to hell. That's right, if you do something as simple as asking for white paper, you'll be dragged to hell through a toilet. I always suspected toilets were portals to the underworld. This confirms my theory. There is one and only one way to avoid this grisly fate. They say you have to actually refuse anything the spirit offers you. If you do this, he will leave, at least for now. I guess you can be dragged to hell through a toilet another day. Moving on to number 8 now, we have TOMINOS Hell. This has become a pretty famous urban legend of the internet in recent years. You may know it as a creepypasta, but its history actually dates back over 100 years ago. According to legend, TOMINOS Hell is the name of a story that was published in a 1919 collection of poetry titled Sakin. The poet was Saijo Yaso, a university professor whose work was filled with strange symbols and wordplay that some people found very disturbing. The story is based around the Buddhist concept of hell and recounts the story of Tomino and his sisters being tortured in hell. Sounds interesting? I'm sure you now want to hear me read it out. Well, here's the thing. According to internet legend, the poem will curse the reader with misfortune and even death if read out loud. It should only ever be read in your head. Now, I'm not a particularly superstitious person, but yeah, I'm not going to read it out unless I absolutely have to, and I don't. You can see excerpts of it on the screen now, and of course, you can find the full version of the poem online. Just remember, don't read it out loud. Don't want anything happen to you, you know. I've grown quite fond of you guys. Next up at number 7 now, we have Gotsu. This roughly translates to cow head and is a 17th century story that was deemed so horrific, so spine-chillingly shocking, almost all copies of it were destroyed. The few people that read or heard from one of the last copies were said to sit in silence, shaking for days, until eventually dying of fright. Now, because of all of this, only fragments of the tale remain to this day. One day, a school teacher was taking his students on a field trip. In order to calm them down on the bus, he decided to read them a horror story. For some reason, he chose to read from a copy of Gotsu. He only meant to scare the kids a little bit, but they began convulsing and begging him to stop. To his absolute horror, he found that he could not stop. It was as if some dark force was compelling him to continue. His eyes turned white. He said unspeakable things. The children were screaming and then nothing. He awoke a few hours later. The school bus was in a ditch. The driver was slumped over the wheel, shaking. The children were unconscious and foaming at the mouth. If you find a copy of that story, miss me. Coming at number 6 now, we have INUNAKI village. Many Japanese villages are famous for their beauty. Not this one. This one is one you never want to visit. Legend says that society abandoned this place and lawless people moved in many years ago, outcasts of society who saw a chance to live somewhere where good people could never stop their wicked deeds. They had their own set of laws which legalized incest, cannibalization and murder. As the rumors of this village grew, people wanted to know what happened. Why did everyone originally leave? Well, they say the villagers were killed off by a serial killer with an axe. Another explanation is that a terrible disease made everyone rot. As far as details about this dark place go, that's pretty much everything. Many people tried to visit it, but they say that those that succeed are never heard from again. The fact that you can't get a phone signal there only adds to its scare factor. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the OKIKU doll. While many of the stories I talk about in this series are of spirits or things from thousands of years ago that you can't visit or touch, this is a very real doll that you can actually go and see for yourself. It's on display at a religious temple. It has its very own section there and tourists come to see it. Why would a doll deserve all this special treatment? Well, how do I put this? The doll grows hair. Yeah. That's what they say. Perhaps even creepier is that the hair growing from the doll's head is human. So where did this creepy human hair growing doll come from? Well, according to the story, it was originally given to a 2-year-old girl by her brother in 1918. The girl died a year later and the family kept the doll in memory of her. Some sort of strange soul fusing appears to have happened because that's when they noticed the hair growing. The parents were freaked out and brought the doll to a local priest. He agreed to keep it there for a few months and observe it to confirm if their story was true. He said it was. The doll has remained on display in the temple there ever since. The doll was named after the girl who it belonged to, and this year marks 100 years since it was bought for her. Perhaps someone should keep an eye on it. Just for this year. Moving on to number 4 now, we have KUNEKUNE. Now some say this is basically the Japanese version of Slender Man. KUNEKUNE will always appear far away at first, in the distance, in the shadows, his white body twisting in the wind. It's a good thing that he appears at a distance from you because that's exactly how you want it to stay. They say if he ever does get near you, you will go mad forever. There is no cure, there is no coming back from this. If you step near him, your mind turns to permanent jelly. Now according to Japanese legend, he has claimed many victims over the years, but you often won't hear about them because the victims are left wandering alone, going nowhere fast until their mind and body collapse for good. Next up at number 3 now, we have the Purple Mirror. I'm quite happy with this story because it involves a creepy curse that doesn't affect you if you're over the age of 20. I am. But for those of you that aren't, here's a warning from this Japanese urban legend. A young girl was given a mirror by her mother for her birthday and spent many hours a day staring at it. The girl wanted more than anything to be beautiful and ended up developing an eating disorder in order to be thinner. It took its toll. She became weak and frail and not the beautiful figure she was once chasing. One day she threw her mirror on the ground in anger. It smashed everywhere. A little while later, she was making arrangements for her coming of age party on her 20th birthday. She got into a horrible car accident though and died at the scene. Her last words were a whisper, "Purple mirror, purple mirror." Her grieving parents searched for this mirror, but they never found it. Now, they say that if you do not forget the phrase purple mirror by your 20th birthday, something bad will happen to you. So forget those words. Maybe I never should have said them in the first place. Next up at number 2 now, we have HANAKO-san. Some call this evil spirit the terror of the toilet. You're about to see why. She is said to be a creepy girl that haunts bathrooms across Japan. Now there have been so many stories about her that the details often vary, but the main story is usually the same. She's often found on the 3rd stall of a women's bathroom on the 3rd floor of a building. She has bobbed hair and wears a red skirt. She holes up in the bathroom waiting for someone to provoke her. However, if for some reason she isn't there, some say there is a way to bring her to you. I don't know why you would want to do that though, but here it is. You knock on the door to her stall in multiples of 3. So knock 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 knock. Then you call her name and ask if she's there. The most common version of this is to simply say, "Are you there, Hanako-san?" If she is there and wants to be seen, she will reply in a faint voice saying, "Yes, I'm here." Now of course, a story like this is never going to have a happy ending. Legend says that at this point, the stall door will just open to reveal a little girl in a red skirt who pulls pulls the summoner into the toilet, probably to hell. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Tokyo Terror Taxi. Great name, isn't it? This is a story of a taxi driver's paranormal experience in Tokyo many years ago. I'll read the most popular version to you now. It was a stormy autumn night near Aoyama Cemetery, where he picked up a poor young girl drenched by the rain. It was dark, so he didn't get a good look at her face, but she seemed sad and he figured she had been visiting a recently deceased relative or friend. The address she gave was some distance away, and they drove in silence. A good cabbie doesn't make small talk when picking someone up from a cemetery. When they arrived at the address, the girl didn't get out, but whispered for him to wait a bit. She stared out of the window at a second-floor apartment. 10 minutes or so passed as she watched, never speaking, never crying, simply observing a solitary figure move about the apartment. Suddenly, the girl asked to be taken to a new address. This one was back near the cemetery where he had first picked her up. The rain was heavy and the driver focused on the road, leaving the girl to her own thoughts. When he arrived at the new address, a modern house in a good neighborhood, the cabbie opened the door and turned around to collect his fare. To his horror, he found himself staring at an empty back seat with a deep puddle where the girl had been sitting just moments before. Mouth open, he just sat there, staring at the vacant seat until a knocking on the window shook him from his reverie. The father of the house, seeing the taxi outside, had calmly walked out, bringing with him the exact change for the fare. He explained that the young girl had been his daughter, who died in a traffic accident some years ago and was buried in Aoyama Cemetery. From time to time, he said, she hailed a cab and, after visiting her old boyfriend's apartment, asked to be driven home. The father thanked the driver for his troubles and sent him on his way. Amazing. I really could go on forever. I love Japan so much that even these really creepy stories won't put me off from visiting one day. What country should we go to next though? Should we just keep going with Japan? Should we turn this into a Japanese urban legends channel? What do you guys think? Also, a quick shout out to Jonathan Lowe, brother of Ryan Lowe. These are guys that I know from back home. I know you're watching this video, so hey guys, thanks for watching. I don't know what else to say for that. Thanks for watching. As always guys, my name is Danny Burke and I will see you all in the next video.